Yes, we are live, ladies and gentlemen, around Australia, New Zealand and around the world. Good morning and in some cases good evening. Welcome to the Inspire Speakers International Showcase in partnership with AV1. We are coming to you this morning or this evening live from AV1's sensational control room here at the MCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art in the heart of Sydney, which you might be able to tell, you may have guessed, from the stunning view. I'm not sure how well you can see it. Behind me, there it is. It is the Sydney Opera House on a beautiful Sydney morning with the natural palm trees that you find in front of the Opera House just in the foreground. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself for those of you who don't know me and think that you have actually tuned into Sunrise and are watching Koshi. You're not. My name is Andrew Klein, one of Australia's foremost non-celebrity, no-name MCs. I'm genuinely delighted to be here hosting the Inspire Showcase today. I now spend my time hosting events virtually like this, conferences and webinars live from my home or from beautiful, stunning, cutting-edge studios like AV1's Control Room Studios where we are today. And I'll be doing that until such time as we can meet each other in person again, whenever that might be. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning or this evening, I have to keep qualifying, we are going global. We have three outstanding guests, international guests that we will be chatting with from this couch and another couch in a chat show, chat room format. Many of you have already sent through questions for our presenters, and we thank those of you who have, and we'll get through as many of them as we can, but we're happy to take live questions from you through the Q&A, through the chat line, so feel free to send through questions and we will get to them if we have time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of time, it is time to cross live now to our first international speaker this morning. We are going to meet and hear from Barbara Corcoran. Barbara is the founder of the Corcoran Group, the prominent New York real estate brokerage, and she is a shark on the US version of Shark Tank. She is like, for the benefit of our Aussie viewers, she is like the love child of Janine Alice and John McGrath. That Aussie Shark Tank reference may be lost on our international viewers. Barbara's claim to fame is getting straight D's in her time in high school. She had 20 jobs by the time she turned 23, but her next job actually made her into one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the US. She borrowed $1,000 and quit her job as a waitress to start a tiny real estate company in New York City, the Corcoran Group, which has gone on to become New York's premier real estate brokerage. She's the author of the #1 best-selling book, Shark Tales: How I Turned $1,000 into a $1 billion business. She is also the host of the podcast Business Unusual. She is an inspiring speaker. She is a frequent small business and real estate contributor on all major networks in the United States. She has been a shark for the past 9 seasons and counting on ABC TV's 4-time Emmy Award-winning show. She is addicted to lime chips. She recently hosted a dinner party with friends and she wore bubble wrap to protect herself from the coronavirus. She enjoys reading tarot cards to her dog Max, and just last year, celebrating a huge birthday milestone, Barbara held a funeral-themed birthday party at her home and emerged from a coffin to start the party. I wish I was making that up. She joins us from her office in New York City live, and despite having a funeral last year, very much alive. She is the sharp yank from the Shark Tank. Please give a virtual round of applause in your homes as we cross over to New York City for Barbara Corcoran. We are delighted to chat with this morning or this evening over there. Barbara, how are you doing and how is life right now in New York City?
Well, we've had a tough time in New York City, as you could imagine. I've been in quarantine with my family for about 94 days, and everyone counts the days here. like we're in prison, like we X out days on our calendar. We as a city, I think, took the corvid in the chin, kind of like New York style. We were hit hard. We were hit first, and we came out very, very strong. So right now we're in a pretty good position compared to many of the other cities in the United States, and we're thankful for that. The images in my mind, I don't think I'll ever really shake. And I've lived in New York City my whole adult life. But the images, they just seem like they're out of some movie or storybook. I think of the thousands of demonstrators marching down Fifth Avenue with every store boarded up 3 stories tall, including all the big international fashion brands that you never thought would be boarded up. Like you could see no branding whatsoever on Fifth Avenue, Madison Avenue. I live right over Central Park, and I usually have a beautiful view of the pastures of Central Park. But I don't think I'll ever shake the image of the hospital tents that were constructed there to house the sick and the dying. And they were just taken down, fortunately. And that seems like a note of hope. Today was momentous because all the store boarding was taken down. So we could actually see, even though the stores aren't yet open, we could see the company names. It feels like a breath of life is coming back in. And last night, for the first time, I realized I wasn't awake many times in the night with the ambulance sirens constantly going off. And so you've asked on a good day. It feels like a very hopeful day right now, but it's been a very, very tough time for everybody here in New York City.
Yeah, so we certainly see and so we hear, and we're very much thinking of you on the other side of the world. Barbara, we have got about a 15-minute window. We're going to start the clock. I'm going to start throwing questions your way, and let's see how we go. If anybody wants to send through questions, they will send them through, and I'll get to those as well. I wanted to start, I gave a little bit of an introduction to you and your stunning career, initially in real estate. But for those people here in Australia who may not watch the US version of Shark Tank and don't know that much about your story, can you give us a little brief background into how you got to where you are today?
I'll give you the shortest version I can. Real estate was not my first career. I had 22 different jobs, none of them important, but they gave me a great background about people and working hard. And so I started my business when I was 23, and I had a lucky break. I was a waitress at a diner cleaning up my counter, and a very handsome man walked in, and he became my first boyfriend. And he offered to give me $1,000 loan to start a business about a year later. He said, I think you'd be great in real estate. Why don't I become your partner? And here's $1,000 to start it. I milked that $1,000 and stretched it as long as I could. And I was able to take that loan, and over a period of 26, 27 years, I guess, I built it into the #1 residential company in New York City. So I grew up with New York City. It was a horrible place to live. No one wanted to be here when I started. And by the time I sold my business for $66 million in cash, everyone wanted a piece of New York City. So I feel like I almost parallel the building of the city with my own career. I later reinvented myself, not really knowing what to do after I sold my business and feeling a little bit lost, frankly. I reinvented myself as a business investor because I thought I was very good at building businesses, and that got me Shark Tank. And they offered me the job in Hollywood. I thought it was a thrill to go to Hollywood. I don't know why, but I bought myself a new set of luggage and became fancy. And off I went to Hollywood on this show called Shark Tank. And that is the #1 business show in America, bar none. We've had many imitators, but no one's been able to approach the success of that show. And that's what I've been doing for the past actually 11 years.
Okay, fabulous. I do need to ask you in regards to Shark Tank, I couldn't help look over your shoulder. Am I looking at an Emmy that's just casually sitting on your shelf behind you?
Yes, we actually have gotten 4 Emmys, but we were only allowed to have 1 each. So I'm going to order another 3 Emmys through a secondhand shop, I think. So I have all 4 there next time you see me.
Excellent. I've hidden all of my Emmys and Oscars and our Australian Logie. I've hidden those from view. You won't be seeing them today, but it's very impressive to see your Emmy. I only wish I had won something. So let me ask you a question. The last few months, you touched on it before, it's no secret, it's been very, very difficult for everyone, and it's been particularly difficult for people in travel, and it's been particularly difficult for people who work in the events industry, amongst many other industries. But today, we are being viewed by a lot of people in the events industry. So I wanted to try and touch on that and get your thoughts on that. Many businesses in all industries have had to downsize and contract to survive the restrictions that we're all dealing with. In the businesses that you work with and that you invest in, what differences have you seen in the last few months between those who have navigated this weird time well and those who perhaps haven't really done so well? Any learnings or thoughts in that area?
Yeah, I've learned quite a few lessons myself, actually. And I've been in business many years. I found that the only difference between the businesses that have done very well and actually increased their sales through the pandemic, which seems remarkable, and increased them substantially, were each led by phenomenal entrepreneurs. And then the question, of course, that you want to know is what separates the entrepreneurs that have succeeded wildly and made their businesses stronger. And I would say the two commonalities are they hit the ground running. They never thought for a minute, let's wait this out and see where it goes. It wasn't even a thought anyone had. So every great entrepreneur that I've invested in out of the 80 some odd businesses, maybe I would say maybe 12, 14 of them are doing much better than they ever did, taking advantage of what went on and frankly wiping out the competition because they were smart enough to not hesitate but reinvent every aspect of their business. I'll name a few. I have a business doing about $80 million in sales online named Comfy, which is an oversized sweatshirt. People love it, especially locked in home, but it's always been selling well for the 2 years I've been a partner in it. But Comfy immediately, before even people knew that retail was going to suffer, ripped everything out of retail, aggressively attacked their brand online, and replaced the $80 million lost sale with $130 million within 3 months. How did they do that? It was that hunger and this idea that we're in trouble. What do we do fast? I had another very tiny business just bought in this last season called Boho Vans, which is very popular right now. People like to go to the mountains and escape in a custom-made van. Well, custom-making vans is not a profitable business. But when the virus hit, they immediately made a pattern of every single part that customized the vans and mass produced them. So now everyone thinks they're getting a slow, customized van that takes 3 months to build. They're knocking them out in 7 days. And so they've been able to meet the enormous demand and their business has exploded. But it really is the attitude of the entrepreneur. They're worried. When they're good, they're worried. They'll think they're never going to make another sale. They're panicked and they operate every day as though they're going to go out of business. And as a result of that attitude and eagerness and immediacy, they don't go out of business. They look back and realize they built the business even stronger than it ever was.
Yeah, Barbara, the issue in Australia at the moment is that slowly now the restrictions are being eased and people are going back to work and businesses are beginning to grind their gears again in an attempt to get back to normal, whatever that is. What are your thoughts about what can businesses do to make up for the dead time, the lost time that they've just had over the last couple of months to hit the ground running again and try and get back to where they were?
I think the smartest thing to do, and I've done this with every business I've invested in as an exercise, but not just for the exercise, because I think it's a common sense approach. I've had every business, and I would recommend it, sit down and make a list of every piece of your business and where it came from. You would think people would naturally know that. I found that people really don't know it after they've been in business, say 2 or 3 years. So go from the very beginning, write down every piece of business and put right next to it, hey, where did that business come from? And then look at that list and realize that every single source of business is not going to be there for you. And now what do you do? It's a scary picture to look at, looking straight in the face, but it's the right thing to do. Then you have to sit down and say, so what can I do to produce new business that's going to replace this? Because we're not going back to anything we've had before. We might have a version of it or borrow a little bit from it, but it's not going to go back any industry to what we had before, I don't believe. And so then it's your charge to get every single person, whether you have a team of 3 people or 700 people, every man is equal, every woman's equal. Get everybody to brainstorm on what else could we do? Where else could we get that piece of business? What else could we offer? What's on the menu? And every idea counts. The stupid ideas can often become your winner ideas. Just make a list of everything and then task it out. Take that idea, run with it, come back to us with a deadline. Boom, just done. So you're able to populate a lot of brain power at once and bring many opportunities of what might possibly work. Because this is a kind of market where you can't sharpshoot. You know, when you get really sophisticated on business, you could sharpshoot and say, let's emphasize this or do that. No, all bets are off. This is a business climate where you have to have buckshot. Just shoot at everything and see what sticks. And that's what I've had all of my businesses do. And it's a phenomenal exercise to get your eyes wide open, scare the crap out of you, and get you running.
That's great advice, Barbara. One thing about you, for anyone who's seen you on Shark Tank, or even if people just follow you on Instagram, you're a serious business person and you treat business seriously, but you don't take yourself seriously. In fact, it's very clear that you enjoy yourself, even in the pandemic, and you try and have fun at all times. What advice have you got for people, given everything that's going on? How can people have fun at times like this? How can they bring some fun into work, given the realities that we're dealing with? Because it's probably more important now than ever.
It is more important. You said it exactly what I was going to say. You can always find fun. You can always find fun. It's just a matter of believing it's there, and then you invent it. It's like having a form where there's a blank, you have to fill in the blank. So fill in the blank. We do all kinds of things at my little media company, but I do it to have fun. But I've also learned over the years that when you have fun, what you wind up having is an innovative business. And that's really what you need right now. The number one need right now is to be innovative. And how do you do that? The best way to loosen up the joints, take out the screws, is to make sure people have fun. So we've done regularly a team happy hour, but the rule of the happy hour is you have to have at least one glass of wine before you go on to the happy hour, so people are a little buzzed. You know why? Because people who are buzzed loosen, you're going to think I recommend alcoholism. I'm really not. But because when people are buzzed and they have to wear something stupid, you know, and no makeup allowed, so we see each other for what we are. We had a mass competition. You had to have bizarre it sounds like kindergarten, I'm sure, but I was the judge. I'm the shark, and I decided who the winner was, and the winner got $1,000. So everybody really put themselves into it. We took our office chairs out of the office because we were thinking we weren't shaking things up enough, and we rolled them down Park Avenue, having the doorman on Park Avenue cheer us through, racing down Park Avenue while seated in our office chairs. Kind of dangerous, actually. Somebody almost broke their neck, but we laughed and laughed about that for weeks after. What happens if you have fun with your team? People love each other more. Very important to teammanship, to love your teammate. You get people out of their comfort zone and you make them feel as though they see each other in a different light. You have a commonality of a culture of fun. But what I get out of it as a boss is I get a creative team. That's what I'm really after. I mean, I love to have fun and make a lot of fun, but what I really want is I want to know that everybody's brain is firing and they're like, got those juices going all the time, and they're trying to think of what else we could do, because that's what builds a business, constantly changing what you do, changing it up and thinking of new things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. The flexibility and the authenticity, and as you say, the creativity. We've got time for one final question. Barbara, I'm chatting with you virtually. I know that you're very comfortable in this format because you've been doing virtual and TV work, communication for a long time. In the event space, which many of our audience members are from, we've all had to move things virtually into a world that many people are not comfortable with. Have you got any final tips for people as to how they can do business more successfully virtually?
Yes, and I know it sounds vain, but make sure you have good lighting. I would never be on camera at my age with great lighting. I wish I could turn the camera. I probably have 3 sets of lights shining on me, so it takes about 30 years off my face. Why? Because I want to look good. I don't want to look my age, right? If you saw me in person, you'd be shocked. Okay. But the companies right now are welcoming anything online, and you can really, really reinvent your model, and you've got to get comfortable with it. It's, as they say, the new normal. I don't like that expression, but it is the new normals, because I find that companies right now in the event space are very reluctant to spend money. They don't want to spend big money. They'll spend some cautious money, but not big monies. I also find that attendees are not talking about traveling again. Even when it clears, they're going to be hesitant. They're going to be reluctant to travel and stay in hotels. That's a problem for the event business. But people, customers, attendees are very eager and happy to watch entertainment and learn online. So if that's what the sweet spot right is now, which it is, and the webinar has replaced the live speech absolutely already, and how much of the live speaking and the big events will come back, we don't know. It's too early to tell. But if it's going to move in that direction, you better get comfortable online and do everything you can to make yourself a powerhouse online and speak with credibility. And that takes practice. And it's very easy to learn how to do it. You just have to get willing to accept the fact that that is the future, and you better get good at it.
Absolutely, and that's a beautiful note on which, unfortunately, in the interest of time, we are going to have to end. It has been lovely having the opportunity to chat with you virtually. I do hope that at some stage we can actually get you, I know you've been here before, get you out to Australia to an event and actually chat with you live in person, but I know that you're available for virtual things, and hopefully people will be able to chat with you virtually. I was going to finish by saying enjoy the Australian wines that Keith sent you, but I believe that that's too late. You actually drunk them already last night.
2 whole bottles last night. We got drunk. I haven't been drunk in years. Thank you for that. It felt terrific, but I feel miserable today.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that we've made you feel miserable today, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for your time. Stay safe and take care. Thanks very much, Barbara.
Thanks for inviting everyone. Thanks.
All right, so that was Barbara Corcoran joining us live from the US in New York City. And we are going to stay in New York City right now and meet and chat with our next presenter, Brett King. Brett is a world-renowned futurist and speaker and international best-selling author. He's a media personality who covers the future of business, future of technology, and future of life and society. The Chinese President Xi Jinping cited Brett's book, Augmented, on the topic of AI, artificial intelligence. Brett has spoken in over 50 countries. He's a TED talker. He's a regular television commentator and previously advised the Obama administration on their fintech policy. He also advises regulators and bank boards around the globe on all things technology transformation. Brett hosts the world's first and #1 ranked radio show on fintech called Breaking Banks. It comes to us from 177 countries where it's seen, and he has 6.5 million listeners, which is around the number of viewers tuning in to the Inspire Showcase today, I believe. He is the founder and the executive chairman of Movin, a successful mobile startup. It's raised over $47 million to date with the world's first mobile downloadable bank account. He was shortlisted in 2015 for the Advanced Global Australian of the Year award for being one of the most influential Aussies living offshore. He's good mates with Vladimir Putin. Well, they were once in a conference together, not even at the same stage on the same time, but they were speaking at the same conference, so they're good mates. He's not just a futurist, he's a speaker, a pilot, a gamer, a disruptor, a dad, and the only person on this showcase today with even less hair than me. He still calls Australia home, I'm sure. It is the follically foregoing futurist. All hail the king, Mr. Brett King. And Brett, it is lovely to have you coming to us live from New York. Do you miss us looking at the Opera House behind me? Do you still miss Australia?
Yeah, look, I do. It's almost 21 years now since I've been offshore, so it's a long time between drinks, as they say. I think what I miss is sort of, I guess, the lifestyle choices that you have in Australia, which are a little bit more difficult here. But I don't miss the extra travel I would be doing from Australia if I was based there. So I don't know how Aussie speakers who speak globally do it, frankly, because whenever you travel out of Australia, you got to go to the US or Europe, you got to tack on a day of travel each way, and that's one of the reasons I base myself in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's nice. It's nice to chat with you today. I was going to say this morning. I realise it's not this morning. Brett, for the sake of people who are watching today, we know that you're Aussie living in New York. We know that you're a futurist. We know that you're a speaker. But give us a little bit of your background. How did you come to be doing what you're doing today? Let's just sort of summarise who Brett King is.
Well, I started as a technologist. So back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was coding for a living. By all accounts, was fairly reasonable at that. Started my own business when I was 22 in the software business. Grew that to be a multinational company, software business. Sold that in the mid 90s. Bought an ISP, an internet service provider business, right at the start of the commercial internet. Got into that. That took me to Hong Kong, heading up e-business for Deloitte for the region, and then working for a digital agency called Modem Media, one of the first digital agencies that had big success during the .com. But throughout that process, I was also experimenting with writing. I'd written a couple of sci-fi books that I never got published, but we'll come back to that. And then, basically spent, over a decade in the trenches, working with some of the biggest financial services companies doing digital transformation. Also, organizations like Cathay Pacific and so forth out of Hong Kong. Ended up moving to Dubai, where I started a company that, again, did digitally focused transformation and training. And then during the financial crisis, spent a year working on my first book that got published, which was called Bank 2.0, about disruption in the banking space. And that started me on a 10-year path to writing books. I'm working on my 7th right now, and I've enjoyed extraordinary success as a speaker on that. The success of the first book ended up giving me the vehicle to get some funding to create this mobile banking setup that we started in New York back in 2010. And then from there, I've gone into the futurist angle. I run a radio show here in New York on WGCH 1460, WVNJ 1190, and Stream. And just generally have been focused on the futurist stuff over the last decade or so.
Excellent. And I have to say, it's lovely that just like me, I've got my living room background of the Opera House in the background, that we're clearly seeing your background of the skyline. You're obviously on your balcony at home. I do enjoy seeing that beautiful environment behind you. Looks nice.
It's the scene from Brooklyn. I'm actually on the East River, so it's a zoom trick, the background here, but otherwise you'd just be getting the apartment wall. But I sit on the East River in New York, so we've got the FDR. And I related to what Barbara was saying earlier, because when at the height of the coronavirus, it would just be ambulance after ambulance after ambulance going all night in New York. It was quite daunting to see that. Not only that, but of course, during shutdown, New York's one of the busiest cities in the world. During shutdown, you just don't have these cars on the road. So right now, a little bit of traffic's coming back, but it's sort of surreal being in New York in the midst of the coronavirus crisis, for sure.
Yeah, Brett, I wanted to ask you, you see things from a different perspective to the average person. You see things globally, and you've got a wide angle view of the world. It has been a wild and weird and scary last few months. What has the world learnt since the middle of March 2020?
Well, seeing coronavirus in context with a number of other factors gives us some really interesting data points. First of all, obviously, we haven't experienced in this generation anything like coronavirus previously, where we've had the sort of restrictions that we have. So you see a lot of people pushing back against simple restrictions, such as wearing a mask and so forth, because they see this as an infringement on their individual rights. But coronavirus is really a test of that balance between individual rights and societal rights. And that's something that has sort of like been emerging as a core issue for more than a decade now. If you look back to, say, the early 2000s, since the early 2000s till today, we've had about a 500% increase in mass protests around the world. And so when you look at the economic effects that we've seen as a result of coronavirus, it's identified some core weaknesses in the system. Primarily, massive problems with inequality. Here in the United States, the US is ranked 125th in the world in respect to equality, wage inequality. And so when you look at the protests and issues that have occurred recently around the death of George Floyd and so forth, a lot of the data points to the fact that this is not just about systemic racism in the United States, but systemic inequality as well. And if coronavirus has taught us anything, it's that when we have that system of inequality, that it creates massive uncertainty for the market and creates massive social costs that the world will go on to bear for some time. It just took 21 days from the first reported case of coronavirus in the United States to see the longest bear run in history on the stock market. And now the stock market's back. We still have about 40 million unemployed in the United States. That's for African American households, 1 in 5 African American households have no income right now. I mean, it really is a damning indictment on capitalism, because capitalism had no mechanism to mitigate these risks that we saw coming out of coronavirus. So we have to do better next time, and there will be a next time.
So you've just led me into the next question, talking about the next time. Everyone, certainly here in Australia, and I suspect everywhere, is talking about let's try everything we can to get back to normal, and when are we going to get back to normal. But you've actually said that from your perspective, you think the world will see more disruption and more change in the next 20 or so years than it has in the last 250 or so years. Can you give us an insight or your thoughts into what are those changes, what might be those changes that are lying just ahead of us?
So part of the trick with being a good futurist is being a good pastist, to see what lessons we can learn from the past. And there's this running joke about being a futurist means never being wrong today. But there is an element of science to this, which is what are the behavioral changes that we're likely to see and that become more permanent features of society. If you look back at the Black Plague, for example, that radically changed society. It changed the way it changed the equality, the mix of society. It changed the way people thought about disease and sanitation. The modern industrial age, a lot of the drivers came out of the Black Plague. The Spanish flu, the same. With the first organized structure around public health and national hospital schemes that emerged out of the Spanish flu. So when you look at what's happening in coronavirus today, it's fairly clear that a lot of people have had to adapt to coronavirus by using online, buying their groceries using digital technology. We're doing conferences via Zoom and keynotes via Zoom and things like that. The real question is, which of these behaviors are likely to go back? Well, when it comes to things like online shopping or internet banking and things like this, it's unlikely that these things will go back in the medium term or even the longer term, because once people become used to the added convenience of digital, and these are quite habit forming quite quickly, it's only the diehard people that sort of want the social connection of a grocery store or a bank branch, as an example, that will go back to what they did previously. Certainly, that's going to increase the decline we already saw in sort of the physical retail space. Barbara was talking about Fifth Avenue, and the changes there as a result of the riots and the protests in the US. But long before coronavirus, we saw Amazon taking a big chunk out of the retail environment here in the United States. We've seen the same with Harvey Norman and digital sales in Australia, of course. And that's just accelerated. So that has impact on commercial real estate valuations. It has impact on the way people work in the future. Will we be going to an office? Will we have the option of working from home? Many of these behavioral changes will certainly become more permanent. So there's definitely going to be a new normal. It won't be back to the old normal.
Brett, we've got a question in that talks about the future, but it's really interested in the next 12 months. Thank you to Fiona for sending through this question. Fiona asks, Brett, where do you think we will be in 12 months' time? Do you think it'll be a V-shaped recovery or a long grind out?
Look, for many economies, it is going to be a V-shaped recovery, but certainly for the US, it's looking less likely for that. And part of the reason you have Hong Kong and Taiwan and South Korea that have had good sort of V-shaped recoveries, particular in respect to the treatment of coronavirus, is that their societies were quite compliant when it came to instructions from the government. You didn't have to remind them to wear masks and things like that, because many of those economies had suffered from SARS in 2003. So we do see a distinct difference between the economies who were psychologically and systemically prepared for coronavirus or for a pandemic, where they will recover faster. But economies like the United States, and Australia has done quite well in respect to coronavirus overall, as has New Zealand. But the United States, it may be well into 2021 before we have, a real clarity in respect to the recovery. The economic effects of this, we have not had this level of unemployment in the United States, certainly since the Great Depression. It's clear that's going to take a bit longer to recover. The small businesses, the restaurants, the service industry, businesses that have gone under during this period of coronavirus, they don't just snap back. You need new investors, new businesses to emerge before you can start reinstating those jobs that were lost. So my view is that even if we do get a handle on the virus itself with a vaccine or something similar, the economic recovery is certainly going to be a longer one for the United States. Now, that gives China an opportunity to sort of step into the breach a bit there. And if China's economy booms in respect to the recovery, that may benefit the overall global economy, but would become more reliant on China. For Australia, Australia's already quite well correlated with the Chinese economy, so that may not be a significant impact for Australia. But in the US, it's going to require a real rethink.
Brett, we've got just over 2 minutes time, but I want to ask you a question, and a couple of people have actually asked me to ask you, given that you work in events, what are your thoughts as to the future of conferences and events? Let's not even go 10 years ahead. Let's not even go 5 years ahead. Just in the near future, how do you see the events industry transitioning and adapting?
Look, a few people are going to put their toe in to do physical events or in-person events, certainly in the latter half of this year. I think, certainly by next year, we're going to see a lot of the event business starting to come back. But at the same time, I think that the virtual element of events may become a permanent feature, at least optional for customers to join. If we play that out a couple of years or maybe 5 years into the future, I do think having the option, for example, to attend an event in person or in the virtual space using VR technology will certainly be an option. And so, if you have a speaker on stage, you maybe wearing some tracking markers, you could perform on stage as a speaker and appear in the virtual world on a virtual stage, just like you would in a real person event. So there's some really interesting tech like that that's coming out now, which is going to make in-person physical events less differentiated from virtual events. So I think what we're seeing through coronavirus is an acceleration of those technologies that make these virtual events compelling and potentially of strong value. So I think it's going to be emerging out of this a real choice for attendees and event organizers in terms of the way they deploy. It sounds on the face of it as probably a negative thing for events organizers, but also keep in mind that virtual events allow us to expand our audience significantly. So the other portion of this is going to be really about how we market events, how we get people to register those events to get broader audiences in the virtual space, rather than just rely on events in the physical space.
All right, Brett, we are pretty much out of time. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to answer this final question that's come through from a viewer. Hey, Brett, as a futurist, where do you see Brett King in 10 years' time? 10 seconds.
Well, I just bought an apartment in Bangkok, so hopefully sitting in Bangkok writing another book at a coffee shop.
Fantastic. Well, I hope that comes through for you, but I look forward to chatting with you also in person, face to face, shaking your hand, and hopefully introducing you at a conference sometime soon, somewhere. Brett,
absolutely.
Thank you so
and
much for your time.
I'm still waiting on the bottle of wine, though, guys. No, I'm just joking.
It's on its way. I'm told it is on its way. It'll be coming to you soon.
All right.
Brett, thank you very much for your time today. Thanks. Cheers, mate. Stay safe. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that was Brett King. We are shortly going to be hearing from Auckland with our final presenter, Urzila Carlson. Before we do that, I just want to give you an opportunity to look at things from a different perspective. We are at one of the stages on Control Room. I'm about to interview the man who has put today together from Inspire Speakers, Keith Harwood, but I don't have a chair here to chat with him, and we've got to practice social distancing, and Control Room's got it all set up. So I'm actually going to move from this stage, which is, let's call it the Opera House stage. I'm going to move towards the Circular Quay stage over here to the socially distanced part of Control Room. And from here, I'm now going to introduce you to Keith Harwood. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the founder of Inspire Speakers. We're going to check in on him and find out his thoughts as to how the events world and speaking world and talent world has changed in the last couple of months. He represents the world and Australia's very best inspiring speakers and MCs. I thought I would throw that in. He is a soccer superstar. He is a proud Irish Australian. He is really our host today. Can you please give it up and welcome Mr. Keith Harwood walking onto the Control Room stage. Keith, come on in. And here we go. Let's do the virtual welcome. I'm well. Before we start, before I ask you how you were, I did notice, and a lot of people would have noticed, that Barbara had her Emmy behind her, and I have organised with your staff for you to have your equivalent of an Emmy behind you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Waverley Old Boys Football Club 2018 Women's Undefeated League Champion and Grand Finalist, awarded to Mr. Keith Harwood, who is the coach. It's no Emmy, but it's pretty impressive. Well done.
It's our Emmy, but then we choked and lost the grand final, so.
Ah dear, okay, choking and crossing to grand finals. It's a lovely lead into Urzila shortly. How are things going from your perspective?
Yeah, good. I mean, yeah, never been better. No, it's obviously been a difficult few months. And I think obviously it's been like that for everybody, but no, we've learned a ton and we've been really busy, and and I've definitely put on a few COVID kilos. Like, I'm normally a slim guy, but this shirt was a lot looser in February. I noticed this morning when I put it on, but yeah, not too bad considering everything.
Okay. You obviously see more than most people when it comes to virtual engagements, because you're tuned in with so many different clients. Have you got any tips or thoughts on how people who are watching today, people from the conference and events landscape, how people can effectively engage their audiences in the virtual environment? It's a question that I asked to Barbara, but from your perspective.
Yeah, I think it's good to understand that engaging audiences in the live format was becoming more and more increasingly difficult. I've noticed, like I sit in a lot of conference rooms, and I always judge a speaker on stage based on the number of times an audience is checking their phone. And so it's so hard for speakers in the live format to grab an audience's attention because we've just become addicted to our phones, and I believe now we've got attention spans shorter than goldfish. So in the virtual environment, it's even more difficult because we've less control over attention, because I'm sure there's people watching now and they've got a couple of windows open in the background. So yeah, a couple of tips that we've seen. Keep it short and sharp. That's what we tried to do today. We've got an hour. We've kept it jam-packed, but even though listening to Brett and Barbara, you can listen to them all day long. So I'm actually standing over there going, oh, I wish I made this a little bit longer, maybe a 90-minute event. But I think short and sharp, like no 60-minute long sessions, and definitely no whole day sessions. I'd make them more like a half day. More conversation, less presentations. You know, we're isolated and working remotely, so we need to be connected. So the conversation, again, which is what we've tried to do today, less talking heads, because you know people can just watch YouTube and watch the best speakers in the world if they want that. If they just want content, you know, we're not short of content. So more conversation. And I think the last thing is be creative and trying to have fun. That's the big thing we've seen come through, is the creativity of people thinking, well, how are we going to engage this audience? And we did some work with Urzila, she's coming up now, with a client, and they had a conference TV show, and it was very fun, and you know, it made you want to tune in and dial in. So I think that creativity piece is the winner through everything that's going on. So there's
absolutely.
3 tips.
And we're definitely seeing a lot of that. The circumstances have bred some really great innovation and creativity. Putting that aside, hot topics. What are people calling up and asking for as far as speakers? What are people interested in hearing?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I know it's an overused term, but uncharted waters, territory, that's where we are. So COVID has thrown any sort of trends up in the air. Like, so the trends before COVID hit, you know, there was purpose-driven businesses, trust, mental health, well-being was huge, resilience has been for a long time, technology, climate change was starting to come through and drive on conference agendas. So in the last, say, 3 months, there's no set trend. We're still all very new to this. It's only been 3 months since mid-March when the conference and events industry was rocked. Most industries, but you know, and in particular our industry. So there's no set trends. We're not getting any briefs from people saying, oh, how do we work from home remotely, those sort of things. But it is being much more intentional, much more thought, much more from an educational point of view. And it's, yeah, I wouldn't say there's any hot topics, but it's being more creative and more intentional about the content. Has to be tailored for your audience and be even more relevant than before.
Final question I have for you. This has actually just come through from one of our audience. It's a great question for event organisers and from a speaker's perspective. How have speakers' fees changed since COVID-19 for virtual engagements? How does that work, and what can people expect? Yeah,
it's been interesting. I think it's a case-by-case basis. So you have certain talent that top-level celebrities, they'll always be in demand. Their fees don't change no matter really what's going on in the economy. But there is a selection of speakers out there, excellent speakers who will drop their fee for a virtual engagement. The general trend is 25% to deliver virtually, but some speakers are holding their live fee because it's the same level of preparation to deliver tailored content. Other speakers are saying, no, look, we want to work more, and the live format's gone away, so we're willing to reduce our fees. So my advice would be, ask the question, whether you're dealing with us or someone else, ask the question, but because if you don't ask, you don't get. But it shouldn't be the driver when you're looking, you know, you want to come first with demographics, content, and those things first, and instead of fee.
Great. Perfect answer. We are out of time. Keith, thank you very much for chatting with us, but more importantly, thank you for staging this entire event together with AV1 today. It's really appreciated.
Thanks for you for hosting and everybody for tuning in.
No worries. I'll let you take that, clean it off with disinfectant and bask with it in the background. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Keith Harwood as we move back to the other stage. Just got to make sure that I don't fall, and we are back at the Opera House stage where I'm comfortable. Not that I wasn't comfortable with you, Keith, but I like it here with the view. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a perfect view given that we are crossing over to New Zealand, and I wanted New Zealand to see what they are missing out on by not putting us in the bubble with them just yet. Our final guest this morning is multi-award winning South African New Zealander Urzila Carlson, one of the biggest names in comedy in Australia and New Zealand, a television favourite in both countries. She is the much loved regular on the Australian and Kiwi versions of Have You Been Paying Attention? Her trademark deadpan humour and cheeky wit has seen her win fans not just in Australia and New Zealand, but globally as well. She has toured the globe and she sells out live shows year after year around the globe in years when touring and live shows can actually take place, which they slowly now can in New Zealand. She's a mother of two. She's proficient in English, Afrikaans and Kiwi. She is the funniest former newspaper typesetter that you will ever meet. She is a woman that I now like to call a close and personal friend, but she's asked me not to. I hope you're paying attention. Let's cross to Urzila Carlson. All right, we are live. Urzila, how you doing over there in New Zealand this morning, afternoon, whatever the hell it is over there?
I don't know, mate. I just got up. It's early afternoon. It just switched over. We're in the afternoon. I've brushed my hair, my teeth. I'm ready to go. Still no pants, but great to be here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that lovely image. It's really changed the way in which virtual presenting operates. Urzila, I need to ask you, as a Kiwi, which you are, as an Aussie, which I am, we've been watching a lot of boasting in the recent weeks about how COVID-free and COVID-friendly, and now you're at level 1 in New Zealand. I have to say, I took a little bit of pleasure. I'm not comfortable admitting it, but I did take a little bit of pleasure in hearing that you're not COVID-free anymore. There's 2 or 3 new cases. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got 3 new cases, and I don't want to talk about it. It's what's happening in our country. It's got nothing to do with you, Andrew. You just mind your own freaking business.
That brings joy to my heart. I can hear the frustration in your voice, but well done. Quite seriously, New Zealand is also doing well. I hope that we're able to communicate with you soon. Tell me, when this all happened, when COVID first hit, how did things change for you, as in for Urzila Carlson directly? What happened in your life?
Well, all my entire tour for New Zealand, Australia, I was supposed to be in the States right now. I've got a Netflix special coming out in a month that I was going to be in the States for to launch. I can't do any of that. But on the upside, sure, I've lost heaps of money. But I made so much banana bread, and I've learned both the kids' names, which is really nice. So it's been like everything's ground to a halt, but I've done so much stuff online. I've recorded TV shows through this very laptop. And you know what? Actually, I've had a great time during lockdown.
What have you learnt being at home, not travelling, not leading the normal lifestyle that you lead? What learnings have you picked up around the house, new skills, new talents that you've developed?
Well, I've got no new talent. Like, people have been learning new languages. I've got none of that. But what I have found out is my neighbours are weirdos. Like, because I'm away so much, and when you move into a place, you go, oh, this is great, and everyone's at work. But when we're all at home all the time, you go, oh, I didn't know my neighbour can't play the pan flute, and he doesn't know either. So I've just learned all of this stuff from them. It's really intense.
Fantastic. It's good to hear that you're putting the time to good use and making it worthwhile. Now, from what I understand, your restrictions have eased and the comedy scene slowly has started to open up again. You've just done a couple of gigs. What was that like? Was it different? Was the setup different? Was the audience different? What did you learn from that experience?
Well, when we initially could move, and because I think it's almost the same as it is in Australia now, we have to keep the 2 meter distance and everything. Then we put on a show and we took everyone's temperature, all their details, and they came in. And I have to be honest, the audience were pretty freaked out. They were all sitting there like, and so were the comedians on stage, because it's been basically 6 months since we've done live gigs, because January, February, summer, you don't do a lot of gigs because everyone's out at the beach or fishing or whatever. And then when you come back in, like now would be our busiest time, because when the weather's bad, people go out to comedy shows because you're inside and it's nice and cozy. So people were quite freaked out, but then we dropped a level and we could have more people, and people could go to the bar, which they couldn't at the first one. They had to order via app. And now it's just open. People can go to the bar, and I've even hugged a couple of strangers. I'm not, ashamed to say that. One of them definitely wanted to be hugged and hugged me back. The other one, not so much. But it's kind of weird, but it's so weird how quickly you become complacent again, where you just go back to normal. Like, I thought I would never be able to just go buy groceries and bring it into the house without washing it, but I do that now. I can just go buy stuff and not wash everything. It's almost like I've completely forgotten what we've been through. But now with those 3 new cases, maybe I'll get back into it.
Yeah, we are a pretty resilient people in New Zealand and Australia, and I'm happy to hear that things have started to go back to normal and people are starting to react to things a little bit more normally. I wanted to ask you about, have you been paying attention? It's been going on during lockdown. It's looked really, really cool, but I'm gathering you were all, well, I should check with you. Were you at your home where you are now, and how did it look? I mean, it looked like you had some cool background. Was that just a virtual background? Did they send you stuff? How did the whole show work virtually?
It was actually quite amazing. I have a pull-up banner as a background, because the green screen ones didn't want that. They wanted proper. And we were all just at our homes. Like, Sam was sitting in his kitchen. Ed was sitting in his brother-in-law, who's part of their bubble, in his lounge. We all were in different spots. I was just sitting in that room right here behind with a banner up, and my circle light. And because I agree with Barbara, good lighting, that's what you want. And then, we each got a microphone. Like, I just bought one offline years ago for a voiceover job that I did. I just hooked that into the laptop and off we went. And it works really well. I mean, obviously the banter is a bit harder because we're not in studio, but I can still give Sam a go from this side of the Tasman.
Absolutely. It looked, visually, it looked fantastic, and it pretty much was just as funny as it was when you were all in a room together. I wanted to ask you about virtual gigs, virtual comedy gigs. Have you been doing any? Have you been doing many? How have you been finding the stand-up, but from a virtual perspective?
I've done a few, and let me tell you, it's when Keith said people drop their fees, because it's not, because you're at home. I'm like, it is super hard to do a stand-up gig from home. But on the other hand, you don't have to travel, and you can do it in your pajama pants with your red blouse and your blue jacket. Yeah. So, you can sort of, it is easier in the sense that I'm just here and I don't have to stress that I won't find a park, or I'm going to get stuck in traffic or late or anything. I'm here. But on the other hand, because everyone mutes their microphone, so there's no feedback, which is the number one thing you need as a comic. But overall, I'd say 90% of them, because I've been working every single day of lockdown, everything from radio shows, podcasts, TV stuff. I'm the correspondent for South African Television Network about the pandemic and on this side of the world. And I've enjoyed it. I think it's amazing, and I think it's going to change how we work in the future. Even when we're completely open, I'm still open to do it this way. This is great.
That's excellent. I know that you can't actually hear this because this is virtual, but even the guys in black, the boys in black at the back of the control room studio, they are laughing. You have an audience that is laughing. You just can't see or hear them.
Mate, I've always got the sound guys in my pocket. They always on my side.
You've got them here as well. I wanted to ask you, I've got a question that's come through. The question is, Urzila, you emigrated from South Africa to New Zealand. Why not Australia?
You know what? I'm a huge cricket fan, and huge. Like, my son is named after the best cricketer of all time. I won't share his name. But when I decided to move, I couldn't live in a country where Shane Warne lived at the time because he was still playing. So I had to come to New Zealand. Now that he's retired, maybe I'll rethink it, I'll revisit.
So it's Warnie's fault?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got another bunch of questions for you. Before I get to that bunch of questions, I want to ask you a question specifically for the events people who are watching this, which is most of our audience. You work with events people, you work with conference people, you work with live events people. Have you got any wisdom, don't want to put you on the spot with that word, have you got any wisdom for people who work in events and how they might be feeling?
No, I mean, I know you must be going through a hell of a time, you know, as our industry as well, been hit hard and real low. Hang in there, you know, we'll get through this and then we'll get back into it. Just keep fighting the good fight, you know, and punch open doors. See, you know, don't wait for a window to open or another door. You kick doors down and see where you can, you know, organize stuff. And there's so many people who don't know what they're doing at this point. Even if we can just get event people now to look through footage, even on television, and just contact those people and go, look, we want to train you on how to do online stuff, you know, just lift your laptop. No one needs to be looking up your nostrils. So just, you know, find a way. We'll get through it.
Excellent. Lift your laptop. Hashtag lift your laptop. I need to ask you a question on behalf of Amanda. The question is, Urzila, have you met Jacinda?
I have, Amanda. We're good mates. We go way back.
Excellent. I asked Jacinda the same question. She said exactly the same thing. Another question from Isabella. Urzila, can you sing? As in, they're not asking you, I don't believe they're asking you, can you sing now live, but do you have singing talent?
No, I'm so tone deaf. I lip sync happy birthday. If anyone's birthday, I'm so scared anyone ever puts me on the spot or on a TV show where they go, now sing. If my life depended on it, tell my kids I love them.
Can I just say, you paused then and looked from left to right for about 5 seconds without saying anything, and the entire control room, all of the AV people just panicked that we'd lost the audio feed. I wish you could have seen the looks on their faces.
Yeah, it's called acting, boys. Get into it.
Urzila, I've got a bunch of rapid fire questions, and I know that you love the quick questions. You don't have to buzz a buzzer. We've got a couple of minutes. I'm going to fire what looks like, I don't know, there's 15 to 20 questions. We'll just have short, sharp answers from you. First thing that comes into your mind. We're going to play a game called 90 Eventful Seconds with Urzila. Questions about you and the world of events. You ready?
I'm ready. Hit me, Andrew.
All right, here we go. Best thing about being a stand-up comedian?
The people.
Worst thing about being a comedian?
The people.
Favourite place in Australia to perform?
Melbourne.
Least favourite place in Australia to perform?
Darwin, because it takes me 2 days to get there.
I think
and it's warmer than a fat man's armpit.
Our viewership from the Northern Territory has just sunk in the last 3 seconds. You don't have to answer this question quickly. This is a great question. What makes you laugh?
You know what? Just unexpected things that happen. You know, not necessarily people tripping over, but when you don't expect something funny out of someone's mouth and they say it and it's so dry and it's just stuff like that, I just laugh. But if I watch myself on television sometimes, even on Have You Been Paying Attention, I just laugh nonstop and I'm not even aware of it. And sometimes I go, this is so cringe. I wish I could mute me.
It's good to hear. We're all just human. We all say stupid things. How about this one? Worst heckle?
I was in Adelaide. A lady named Jane put her hand up and I said yes, because I don't usually do a Q&A during the jokes. And then she just asked me to leave. That's it. So it wasn't really an aggressive heckle, but it was so, I couldn't even argue with her. I wanted to go.
What is in the Urzila Carlson green room rider?
It's pretty boring. I just have water, preferably sparkling, room temperature, because otherwise cold slams my vocal cords, and a banana.
Best piece of advice to event managers watching today?
Trust the talent that you've hired. They do it every day too.
Worst thing that's happened to you on a comedy stage?
The worst thing that has happened to me, it wasn't really to me. The guy sitting right in front, in the front row, right in front of me, his seat broke and he fell through the actual seat of it. Like the legs didn't split, the seat broke. and he got stuck in the chair, and we had to phone the fire department to come and get him out while I was still on stage, and I kind of had to do the gig and kind of keep the audience informed with what was happening while I was trying my best not to laugh my ass off at this guy.
Had a happy ending. Part of the annual Great Debate a couple of years ago, which you took part in, the debate question was, we should move to Mars. Should we now?
Definitely some people, yes. They mostly on Twitter. Those people should all go to Mars. I think the rest of us can stay, and we'll all make a list. Like my mother-in-law's number one. She can waitress the flight, and then we'll just get some other people and we'll send them all off to Mars.
Last couple of questions. What advice would you give to teenage Urzila?
Hang in there, buy a good hair straightener. Those two things.
Who would play you in a movie about your life?
Either Queen Latifah or Melissa McCarthy.
Your favourite member of Have You Been Paying Attention Australia?
Oh, it has to be Sam Pang. He takes a lot of crap from me every time.
Your secret skill is?
I'm really good at cooking.
And the funniest person in Australia is?
Nazeem Hussain.
Beautiful ending, and we've been enjoying your discussions with Julia and Nazeem Hussain on Instagram. Keep those coming. Urzila, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. All the very best from Australia to New Zealand, and thank you so much for your time this afternoon, whatever time it is in New Zealand.
Thanks for having me. You guys stay safe and healthy.
Cheers. Thanks, Urzila.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's our Inspire Speakers Showcase. As Keith promised you, it would be short, it would be sharp, it would be to the point. And if we've left you wanting more, then we've achieved our aim. Thank you very much to our three amazing guests this morning, Barbara Corcoran, Brett King, and the hilarious, lovely and talented Urzila Carlson. Thank you also to the wonderful team from AV1 Control Room Studios. AV1 have brought us today. Everything seems to, from where I can sit, everything seems to have worked technically absolutely perfectly. Come and have a look at the control room if you would like to see how this can work for your next conference. Thank you to the Inspire Speakers team, all of them, Keith and team, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in and giving us an hour of your mornings, afternoons or evenings. If you've got any questions about any of our guests or our MC today, please contact Keith and the team from Inspire Speakers. And if you've got any questions about the studio or the production, reach out to the team at AV1. We look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully in person sometime soon, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us today.